This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream. OnlyFans has completely changed the game online. Now, you probably already know what I mean by that, but if you're sitting next to your mum and feigning ignorance, then let me explain. OnlyFans is a platform which allows creators to charge fans for access to a private feed of content. Creators can then decide what they want to place behind the paywall and how much they want to charge each month for access. Now, I say creators in a nebulous, non-specific kind of way, but most of the time, these creators are making adult material. That's because, unlike a lot of other platforms, OnlyFans actively encourages adult content creators, if we ignore the week or so when they said they were banning porn before quickly backtracking. Anyway, because of this, OnlyFans has opened up an entirely new revenue stream for adult creators. Many have been able to leave the more traditional porn industry and begin creating on their own terms, earning more independence from doing so. Unsurprisingly then, OnlyFans has been fairly popular with adult creators, so much so that Twitter actually considered getting into the game, with them planning an OnlyFans competitor, which never launched. So let's explain why they were considering it, what it would have looked like, and ultimately why it was shelved. Okay, so the idea of a company like Twitter making money from porn might sound a little bit weird. They're a huge household name after all. Those of you who are watching with your mum, I bet she knows what Twitter is. I mean, your grandma probably does too, although watching a video about OnlyFans with your grandma is an even worse idea than watching it with your mum. Anyway, why would a big reputable company get into bed with the porn industry? An industry that huge companies are usually pretty frightened of, rightly or wrongly. Well, there's a number of reasons that Twitter's interested in this. The first being the classic reason: money. Now, Twitter might have the name recognition, political notoriety, and controversy associated with other big tech giants. But the one thing they don't have is the money. In fact, Twitter only actually made money for 2 of the last 10 years, with them losing over $1 billion in 2020 and $200 million in 2021. As such, Twitter is always looking for new business models, new ways to bring in money and extract profit from their hundreds of millions of free users. Now, one way they've been trying to do this lately is by allowing creators to charge for paywalled content on Twitter. Called superfollows, creators can charge fans to view private feeds of tweets, with Twitter then taking a cut of the revenue. But wait, I said that they were considering making an OnlyFans rival. It sounds like they've already done it, right? Well, the one thing that separates them is the only thing which superfollows doesn't allow, and that's adult material. So, while Twitter does allow adult content creators to post on their platform more generally, they didn't allow them to monetize or paywall their content through superfollows. Now, the thing you need to know about Twitter is, and pretend to be shocked in front of your mum again, Twitter is full of porn. Like I said earlier, most other big tech companies and social media sites shy away from the adult industry. Instagram is famously scared of nipples, let alone sex. So Twitter is one of few social sites that actually permits porn. In fact, when Tumblr infamously banned porn from their site in 2018, a lot of creators moved over to Twitter and Reddit to fill in the gap. And since then, Twitter has become a bit of a hub for porn. More than that, a lot of people who already post on OnlyFans use Twitter as one of their key marketing tools. That's because discovery is pretty difficult on OnlyFans. So creators often build their base of supporters on Twitter and then funnel those fans into OnlyFans in order to sell them more explicit and interesting content. So it's maybe beginning to make sense why Twitter will be considering a foray into the world of porn. Their site already features a ton of adult creators. They have their own subscription model already for non-adult material, and they need to start making some more money. And that money is surely a huge factor here. That's because while Twitter hemorrhages money most years, the new upstart, OnlyFans, is already a pretty successful business. In fact, they're expected to earn $2.5 billion this year, half of Twitter's projected earnings, without anywhere near the scale or costs that Twitter has to cover. Now, the only real issue with this plan, at least initially, was advertisers. Twitter might struggle to make ends meet, but one of their only major revenue drivers at the moment is advertisers. Understandably then, if Twitter welcomes porn with open arms and becomes seen as a more seedy platform, these advertisers may get cold feet and back away from Twitter altogether. However, this increased risk is fairly limited. Twitter already has tons of porn on the platform, and the paid content would be kept separate from the ads. But it's still understandable why executives were worried about the prospect of losing advertisers before they even really started planning this. Regardless, despite those concerns, they theorized that based on OnlyFans' success, any lost advertising revenue could be offset by the new money that the OnlyFans clone brought in, a project that Twitter called Adult Content Monetization. So they pushed ahead with planning, and Twitter founded the Red Team, an 84-member group whose job it was to plan and research ACM and work out how viable a strategy it really was. Ultimately, though, it was the Red Team who really slammed the brakes on this project. Now, the reason that Twitter ended this plan is pretty upsetting. So, a warning that the remainder of this video will be discussing themes of abuse, albeit only fairly vaguely. Okay, so there's no nice way of putting this, but Twitter doesn't only have porn on its platform. It also has an alarming quantity of exploitative material. In fact, the Red Team even concluded that Twitter cannot accurately detect child sexual exploitation and non-consensual nudity at scale. The report produced by the Red Team outlining the site's problems with CSE might be relatively new, but the idea that Twitter has a CSE problem is far from novel. More than a year earlier, Twitter's board were notified about the issue in a report from early 2021, where Twitter's health team said that while the amount of CSE online has grown exponentially, Twitter's investment in technologies to detect and manage the growth has not. Now, I'm sure this was alarming to Twitter's board members, and I doubt they felt good about their business permitting and profiting from CSE. But the big issue again here is money. Firstly, despite having massive scale with just over 200 million daily active users, Twitter just isn't as profitable as the other social networks. Other companies like Facebook and Google have the resources to throw at issues like this. In fact, as The Verge wrote in their groundbreaking piece on this issue, back in 2019, Mark Zuckerberg boasted that the amount of money Facebook spends on safety features exceeds Twitter's entire annual revenue. That means that Twitter just doesn't have the money right now to handle a problem as big as CSE, and that's not helped by how deprecated their systems are for dealing with this, with a huge chunk of their moderation relying on old software and manual interventions. In fact, it's such a big issue that the company's own working group said that these gaps also put Twitter at legal and reputational risk. Now, this seems to have been the ultimate nail in the coffin for ACM. Adult content monetization might make sense for a number of reasons, but encouraging adult material is only okay when you know it's legal. When your site already hosts illegal content, when you're not that great at monitoring it, and when you actually make money from the illegal content already via the ads being algorithmically placed alongside it, then you probably shouldn't be monetizing porn yet further. Ultimately, Twitter realized that the scandal of having CSE on the site is clearly a big issue for business, besides the moral and legal issues. Actively being seen to monetize and encourage that content, though, well, that's far, far worse. The real risk here is that if Twitter can't moderate CSE already, then there's a potential for people to charge for CSE and give Twitter a cut of that revenue. Actually, that's not even just possible, it's probably more likely. That's because the paywalled service would only make hiding CSE easier. If an account hid all of its abusive content behind the paywall, it's far less likely to be spotted by the average viewer stumbling across it, and therefore it's less likely to be reported and even less likely that Twitter will be able to remove it. Now, Twitter does say that they're working on new tools and processes to better moderate CSE on their platforms. However, internal reports do say that the task of fixing CSE tooling is daunting, going on to say that the health team's strategy should be to chip away at these needs over time, starting with the highest priority features, to avoid the too big to prioritize trap. And they're right. It might seem like a big unsolvable issue, but Twitter has a growing legal, moral, and financial duty to do so. Twitter has already been taken to court over this issue, and this issue only seems to be getting worse. Ultimately, though, we'll have to wait and see what Twitter does next, and if they can take the necessary steps to manage CSE on the platform. Regardless, though, it seems that porn won't be a priority of the service in the near future. Monetizing it just seems far too toxic in the context of CSE. And to be honest, if CSE becomes too large an issue, they could even decide to remove all porn from the site, as banning all nudity is a lot easier than telling the difference between acceptable and unacceptable nudity. So maybe Twitter isn't about to get more porn friendly, but actually less. If you don't like being censored though, then you should check out our streaming service Nebula, where we post extended and uncensored versions of our videos, as well as altogether exclusive content which will never make it to YouTube. How does $15 a year sound? No, really. That's because we've done a deal with CuriosityStream. So if you sign up to their superb service, where you'll find tons of high-quality documentaries, you'll also get Nebula, our streaming service, totally free. That means if you sign up using the link below, you'll get both services for just over $1 a month. A crazy good deal. That's because we've done a deal with CuriosityStream. So if you sign up to their superb service, well, you'll find tons of high-quality documentaries, then you'll also get Nebula, our streaming service, totally free. That means that if you sign up using our link, you'll get both services for just over $1 a month. Thanks for your support.